Okay. So the lunar nodes, a topic that's very near and dear to my heart because it's a way to get a lot of information pretty quickly that is immediately useful in our daily lives and our spiritual path. So a little bit about how I got here, and so you know essentially where I'm coming from. I love the fable of the three blind men and the elephant. You may know that as being a story of how one blind man holds the trunk of the elephant and says, "Oh, it's like a snake." Another is holding its leg and said, "No, it's like a tree." And another is holding its tail and says, "No, no, it's like a serpent, or something like that, something, a third thing." So what I take from that is that each one of us has a little bit of that elephant. There's so much to the great mystery to of the knowledge of the universe, and each one of us has our own window on that, our own experiences, our own gifts to share. And so I feel like I have one small, maybe fraction of a toenail of that elephant that I'm going to be sharing with you today. As a child, I loved astronomy and math. I was actually very much a scientist, began college as a math major, but along the way became more and more interested in the psychological and the spiritual. And while I was in graduate school, completing a master's degree in consciousness studies, which was a wonderful and fascinating combination of psychology, transpersonal psychology, the new physics, religion, philosophy, um, I was just I was learning a lot about much more than science. And I met a woman there who was an astrologer. And at that point, I was actually very skeptical of astrology because I'd not been exposed to anything but what I saw in the Sunday paper. So I asked her to do a chart for me, and I was blown away at what she could tell me about what felt like my soul. I'd never felt seen at such a deep level before. And I remember saying to her, "How did you do that? I want to know how to do that." And from that point on, I couldn't put the books down. So I began studying, reading, anything I could get my hands on. And I really learned a lot by watching the cycles. I learned that I could actually feel the shifts if I paid attention. And I think we all can do this. We're just, if we're really busy or not noticing, they can pass by. But we're part of this matrix of energy that's continually changing. And if we pay attention, we can feel these shifts. I could tell when the moon would change signs within 10 minutes. I would just kind of go, okay, something just changed. What was it? And go to my little ephemeris and go, that was the moon, right? So these are real energies that we're talking about here, and they are perceptible and tangible and affecting us, whether we're conscious of them or not. So after studying for a while, I began teaching, began doing readings, writing. I've been full-time as an astrologer for over 30 years now, and studying it for almost 40. And in addition to that, which I think is important to what I bring to my work, I also have a long background in holistic health. I studied macrobiotics and nutrition for many years, ecopsychology, and spirituality. I've been a student of many different traditions. I love the Theosophical approach of being very inclusive and seeing that there are benefits to all traditions. Okay. So what is astrology? Yeah, so it's a language of light. It's a language of energy, and it's encoded to a sister evolution in consciousness. So astrology is a language of light and energy that's encoded to a sister evolution in consciousness. It reminds us that everything is connected and everything is always changing. And I like to see our chart as a lesson plan rather than it describing so much who we are as more of our lesson plan in the school of life. Call it our karmic timetable, our spiritual roadmap, a mandala that helps us discover or remember our center and our place in the universe and our interconnectedness. And astrology speaks to a different kind of time. We're usually accustomed to thinking of time as a linear process, past, present, and future. But astrology speaks to a different quality of time. It also measures our quantity of time. Our calendar is based on the movements of the moon and earth and sun. But the qualitative time, cyclic time, sacred time, synchronicity, to be in time. The Greeks had several words for time. Kairos was more qualitative time, more cyclic universal time, versus chronos. Our word chronograph, chronology, comes from that heritage of being more clock time. So it did fit quite a time. And as we study astrology, we find that it carves different grooves in our brain. New neural pathways get activated in order to think in these larger cycles and patterns. Okay. So the key, I think, to astrology is to understand that it's all about cycles, really. From from the daily cycle to the yearly cycle to much larger eras and ages. Okay, and the basics are all part of this. Okay, the 12 signs are part of a cycle, an archetypal cycle of development, with each sign marking an important developmental stage, right? No sign is better than another. They are part of this larger whole, right? Their progression. Just as if we were to plant a seed in the spring, that seed would, of course, begin to develop, develop roots, develop a structure, eventually, given the right nutrients, flower and bear fruit, and then go back to the earth. So astrology represents that archetypal cycle of development where something new emerges, develops structure, develops consciousness, and then eventually goes back to the oneness. Right. So from Aries to Pisces, that's the flow, and we'll go into that much more as we go along here. Okay. And one of the reasons I love the nodes, I think I touched on this, is that just knowing something about our north and south node gives us a tremendous amount of information and useful information. And we only need to know our day of birth. If you happen to know your time and place, then you can get more information. We'll talk about that. But just the day is very helpful. Think of your chart as a photograph, and the more precise time you have for the moment that you drew your first breath, the more in focus that chart is, the more detail that we can extract from it. So not to despair, if you don't know your time, generally you can write the hospital you were born in, if you were born in a hospital, or find an entry in a baby book or a Bible or some other source that will help you to find that time. And there are ways, if you don't have access or have any idea what time you were born, there's ways to work backwards through the events of your life to see what chart would fit the timing of those events. Okay, but for our purposes here, all you need to know is your birthday, and people usually generally know that. If you have your birth time, then you have access to another layer of information called houses. And these are sections in our birth chart. If you've seen a chart, it looks like a pizza with 12 slices. And each one of those sections deals with a different department of life. Okay, they answer the question, where? Where on earth will we discover these parts of ourselves? Where will we develop these qualities most directly? What's the classroom? A very useful metaphor that I have gotten a lot of mileage out of and can offer to you as well is think of the planets and the nodes as teachers, the signs as their lessons, and the houses as the classrooms. And that enables you to synthesize these three different parts of the astrological alphabet. Zip Dobbins, Zabor Pottinger Dobbins, first came up with this concept of the astrological alphabet, the 12 letters, being the first letter being the first sign, Aries. The planet that goes with Aries is Mars, and the first house. The second letter would be the second sign of Taurus, the second house, and Venus, the planet that traditionally goes with that sign, and so on. We'll talk about that in a little bit as well. So again, going back to thinking in terms of cycles, and this, especially this 12-stage cycle that the zodiac represents, that that can be used in many ways with the signs, with the houses, with aspects as well. Okay. So what are the lunar notes? You may know a little bit about them. You know a lot about them. They are essentially points in space where the orbits of the sun, moon, and earth intersect. So they blend these three principles, right? Think of the sun, or you can think of the sun as being symbolic of spirit, light, consciousness. The moon is the reflection of the soul on earth, which represents matter. Okay, so they speak to this interface between spirit, soul, and matter. And they are the one thing in astrology that move primarily in reverse motion. They do go direct, like 2 steps forward, 4 steps back, 2 steps forward, 4 steps back, but they're moving primarily retrograde, which is a very interesting dynamic. symbolizing the return to the source. Okay, everything else, some planets go periodically, all the planets, but go periodically retrograde, but most of the time they're moving forward. This is the opposite. And if you have not seen the symbol for the nose, on the left here is a chart just with the north and south node. I cast it for the time that we began this presentation. So I like to think of the north node as looking like headphones, that symbol of here toward the top of the chart. Good metaphor for where we can listen for our cosmic orders. And the south node being like a cup where we can receive experiences from past lives, from ingrained behaviors and other sources, but also what we're already full of and are ready to pass on in some ways. Okay. And then if you put them in a chart, then the chart on the right would be an example of a chart showing the positions of the north and south nodes. They're always exactly opposite. They're tied together, right? And we'll talk about that in just a minute as well. So why are they important? Okay, I mentioned they're very useful, very practical, and can be life-changing. The information can be extremely validating, can put words or things that we have sensed or encountered but have not been able to really work with because they weren't so clearly formed in our minds. They can give us deep insights into our spiritual path, you know, why we came here, what we're learning, what we have to share. And they do describe, you know, some of our deepest challenges, but also our greatest gifts as well, right? And so they facilitate our self-understanding, but also understanding other people. I know for me, it's helped me become more compassionate when I can understand literally where someone is coming from, and what might be challenging for them could be easy for me, and vice versa, right? So we can be more supportive of other people and more compassionate as well. Okay. They have a cycle, like everything in astrology, of 18.5 years, right? And they change signs. If you divide 18.6 by 12, they stay in a sign for about 1.5 years, 18.5 months. And so one way that you can get a lot of mileage out of this is just knowing that around the ages of 19, 37, multiples of 19, 37, 56, 74, and if we're lucky, 93, we get what's called a nodal return. So every 19 years, 18.6 to 19, the nodes come back in the sky to where they were when we were born. So when those realign, it's like, it's easier to remember our soul intentions. It's easier to come back to our center. So you might think back, if you haven't ever done that, what you were considering or dealing with around those ages for important clues as to your life path and what was important. I'll give you an example from my own life. At 19, I wanted to go into linguistics. I was fascinated with how language shaped perception. How could we think of something if we didn't have a word for it? You know, and what we do have words for represents what's important to us. Some languages have many words for one thing, but few for others. I'm told in Tibetan there are many words for mind, like 50 different kinds of qualities of mind, you know, where English has largely just one or two. There's the Eskimo or Inuit version of having many words to describe the different qualities of snow, because that's a major part of their environment and so on. So I didn't go into linguistics at age 19, but one nodal cycle later, I was studying consciousness studies, which was very much about perception and language and our relationship to reality itself. Right? So we might have had a dream at age 19, and we may or may not have actualized that, or may have encountered it and worked on it at later nodal cycles. The halfway points can also be important when the nodes come opposite where they were when we're born. Right now, the north node is in Aries, the south node is in Libra for all of us. In about 9 years, the north node will be in Libra, the south node will be in Aries. So halfway can be a good check-in time as well. So the ages of 28, 46, 65, 83 are good times to reflect on also. So a very short history of this symbol. The symbol itself derives from an ancient cutting tool meant to sever the umbilical cord. In Sumerian myth, the goddess Mamu used it to cut humanity's link with temporal time, or with eternity, descending us into temporal time, symbolizing the shift from cosmic unity into separation, into temporal time. And in Vedic mythology, Rahu Ketu was a dragon serpent who drank an elixir of the gods and was caught and then cut in half as he was doing that deed. And so also symbolizing that severing from eternity, from Ouroboros, the eternal time, into temporal time. And in Vedic astrology, Rahu is called the North Node, is associated with Saturn, where we have to put an effort and where we can reap the rewards of what we put in. Saturn, one of its aspects is being the reaper. So what we put energy into, we reap the rewards of that. And Ketu with Mars being symbolic of one level is passion, right? Where we may act in the shadow side, we may act without thinking, but what we have passion for, have had passion for. And dragons were important in many cultures, in Chinese mythology as well. They're often symbolized as guardians, protectors, a symbol of power. And what must be overcome to regain our center. In earlier times, the North Node, and sometimes still read this, it was called the North Node was the dragon's head, and the South Node was the dragon's tail. So the North Node, as I mentioned, represents our spiritual frontier. It's where in that cycle, the moon would be appearing to come up over the ecliptic, being ascending or going in a northerly direction. And then the South Node is where it's going down or below the ecliptic in a southerly direction. The North Node being, what is challenging for us initially anyway in our lives. It gets easier as we get older and wiser, but it's always growthful. When we do what's indicated by our North Node, there's a sense of satisfaction on a deep level. We feel we're growing, we feel we're alive, we feel we're doing what we came to do. But it's not always easy, right? We talked about the glyph being like headphones, where we can listen for messages, recognize our best options, and experience a greater consciousness, greater joy, and a greater sense of wholeness. Okay. Stephen Forrest, an astrologer that I have a great respect for, an evolutionary astrologer, calls the North Node the medicine or remedy, with the South Node being one's all unresolved karma. It's another way to look at it. But I like to not get it in terms of good or bad. You could think of it as roughly as past or future. The North Node being what we're going toward, roughly the South Node being where we're coming from. But as we go along, you'll see it's a little more complex than that the South Node can also be strengths that we've developed that we can bring forward. Okay. So the glyph we've talked about already. And I like to think of the South Node as our default position. I've been there, done that. Karmic residues, old patterns, can be old habits. And a way to think of, to get a lot of information with that South Node is think of the shadow side of that sign and think of the skillful side of that sign, whatever it is. The shadow sign being destructive patterns or unhealthy ways of relating or behaving, and the skillful being the strengths that we can apply in this lifetime. Okay, and these are photographs that most of these images are photographs that I've taken. Some of them, the diagrams, of course, not. But I thought this one was appropriate for the South Node, being a spider that weaves a web, and we can get kind of trapped in the web of that South Node. It's comfortable, it's familiar, it feels safe because we have survived, or we feel like we know that, so we tend to default into that South Node. But if we just do the South Node, we can feel kind of stuck and stagnant, like we're not really growing or doing what we came to do. So our bodies and our energy level will tell us where we are in that dynamic. And to help even further, we could think of the 12 signs as 6 pairs. And that's what the nodes are, 6 pairs of signs. The first and seventh signs are Aries and Libra. The first and seventh houses, of course, are a pair. And here are some keywords. It's difficult to distill a vast archetype into 1 or 2 words, or even a few words. But essentially, Aries is about learning independence. Libra is about the art of relationship. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Essentially, Taurus and Scorpio and the second in a house are learning about the dynamics of stability versus transformation with Gemini Sagittarius, intelligence and understanding with Cancer and Capricorn, nurturance and contribution, Leo and Aquarius, creativity versus collaboration, and Virgo Pisces, discernment and unity. We'll talk about that much more. We just have a sense of how the nodal axis is really a pair of energies, and they're wanting to be balanced and integrated. So let's go through the 12 signs and 12 houses to get a sense of how that dynamic might play out. And if you know your nodes, you can apply this. If you don't, feel free to email me. I have my contact information at the end of this program, and I'll be happy to calculate that for you. So the North Node in Aries, this is where we're developing courage, assertiveness, willpower, a sense of self, independence, what we might call enlightened selfishness, not to be rash or insensitive, but to know that we have the right to be an individual and to have our own desires. So with the North Node in Aries, we're learning courage. We're learning to face our fears, to take a stand when necessary, learning how to deal with anger and conflict, which is not always easy, or usually is not easy. To do things alone when that's okay, because there's learning to do that occurs only when we're on our own sometimes, right? To rely on our own initiative when that's appropriate. And throughout this part of the presentation, I like to offer practices that help us work with these energies most immediately. So any kind of martial arts would help us develop that quality of consciousness, drumming or any kind of vigorous activity like jogging. NIA is short for neural integrative awareness, I believe. It's a form of body movement that incorporates martial arts, dance, especially jazz movements, and yoga and other meditative practices. So it's a very wonderful spiritual practice based on the body and helps us become aware, very self-aware in a healthy way. The Mankind Project is a wonderful organization for men, helping them to redefine what it means to be a man, to emerge out of the shadow side of what's been considered acceptable for men, to repress one's feelings, to be always strong, to be, in denial of their emotional side and so on. So it's for men, it's a wonderful resource for support and to become more whole. Whereas for women, often we often need more assertiveness training. We're taught to be we're naturally receptive. We're taught to be, whether we're in a male, female, or body, if we have a more feminine stance on life, then we might need to become more assertive. If we're always giving in, we need to learn boundaries and being able to speak up for ourselves. Some movies and books that help with this is many, but some that exemplify this archetype of Aries would be Gladiator. He was a warrior energy, but he was also concerned with other people. Right? He didn't really want to fight anymore, but he had to defend his family. He worked to protect. A good warrior defends and protects rather than attacks. Right? And so that's what Aries represents, being a good warrior, spiritual warrior. Maiden Trip is a wonderful film about a young girl, I believe she was 15, who sailed around the world by herself. Quite an accomplishment for anyone, much nonetheless a single person, and then a young woman at the age of 15. So very inspiring movie. The Hunger Games, another example of the Aries archetype about warriorship. Robert Bly's book, Iron John, is a wonderful resource, and The Way of the Peaceful Warrior by Dan Million, also a great resource for Aries energy. So if we have the North Node in Aries, that means we have the South Node in Libra. So we're coming from and releasing being codependent, overly concerned with what others want and need, being afraid of being alone, being too nice, always accommodating. I know that there's a gift there as well. People who have the South Node in Libra are naturally attuned to what other people want. So they make great counselors, great peacemakers, mediators, diplomats. They're good at teamwork. They don't have to work at that. But if it's too much, then we have to go toward that North Node in Aries. Right? And then in the examples, I'd like to mention some famous people and also countries that have these nodal placements. Right? Countries have charts just like people do, depending on when you choose their date of formation. Some, like China, are hard to to define. You would look at the age of when a dynasty began, or a republic began, or a democracy began, and that would be the birth date of that country. So that they too have their own dharma, their own map, their own evolution. Okay. Now, if it were reversed, if your north node was in Libra and your south node in Aries, then you would take this information and flip it. Right. So if your north node is Libra, you're here to learn about relationship and how to be in an equal partnership, to be neither dominating too much Aries, or too accommodating too much Libra. Right. So learning that dance, that art of one-on-one interaction, and learning who to trust, how to be tactful and cooperative, considerate, when and how to compromise, and how to live, in beauty and peace and harmony. Right. It's ruled by Venus. So things like partner dance, Aikido, is a martial art that's very dedicated to peaceful interactions. It's technically, yes, a martial art, but it's not about allowing either yourself or the other person to be harmed. You protect yourself, but you don't attack. You take whatever energy is thrown at you and you spiral it around and return love. So it's a very transformative process, a very Libra process. Co-counseling is a type of very informal practice where you choose a buddy and you take turns sharing what's on your mind and in your heart. Very good practice for equal exchange. And then some good films. The documentaries Misrepresentation and The Mask You Live In are amazing, offer amazing insights into how we are programmed by culture, by major media in particular, to how it holds up certain models of what it means to be a man and a woman, and limits us, and often is very damaging as well. So really great resources for ourselves, and for, if you have children, for them that are growing up, to see and help them to realize who they really are and not get stuck in those cultural limited boxes. Barbie, which just recently came out, wonderful illustration of Libra and Aries, and then a couple of books that are also helpful about how to be in healthy relationships, The Conscious Heart, and If the Buddha Dated. Yeah. So if we have the North Node in Libra, the South Node's in Aries, right? So we were coming from lifetimes of being a warrior, being focused on survival, self-defense. We might have survived on being, in intensity, and always having to do things by ourselves. We couldn't rely on someone else. So again, the North Node in Libra, learning again how to trust and relax and interact, to put down the sword if, when that's okay, right? So a South Node in Aries is a natural warrior, soldier, can be a good activist, a good advocate, might be naturally competitive, good protector, right? And some examples there again in countries that have the South Node in Aries. So North Node in Taurus and the North Node in the second house brings us to the second letter of the astrological alphabet. Here in Aries, we begin things. In Taurus, we start to stabilize and establish. So developing our own values, our own resources, and on a more subtle level, our sense of self-value, self-esteem, self-worth. And since Taurus is an earth sign, the first earth sign, it's also about how we relate to matter, to the earth, right? To our body, to nature, to money, resources, comfort. And I found in my experience that it's often what you might call a rest lifetime, because we're coming from the South Node in Aries, which we'll talk about in just a second, which can be very, or has been very intense. So learning about safety, learning about we can have stability and peace and beauty and pleasure and simplicity, that we don't always have to be on guard, that it's okay to have nice things, not to be, gluttony or greedy, but to enjoy the beauty of the earth and the blessing of being in a body, right? The grace of the beauty and bounty of the earth. So ways to do that: being in nature in any number of forms, through gardening or hiking, or simply walking along the beach or in the parks. Music, and especially singing. Taurus rules the throat. anything that enriches our five senses. So beautiful sights, sounds, great food, massage, really appreciating, again, our physical senses. Focusing therapy, where we tune into our body to sense what we're feeling, can be a very valuable practice. And anything else, just relax. Right? The movie Coco Chocolat is a wonderful tourist movie. Ratatouille, they're both about the pleasures and beauty of life and food. Some books that help deal with money issues, The Money Fix, and Sacred Economics is a wonderful resource. And then Matt Kahn is one of the best resources that I have found for learning self-love. Self-esteem is a big issue in the United States and possibly in much of Western civilization, because we're born into a very deeply ingrained program of what you might call the Judeo-Christian ethos of original sin. We don't usually buy into this on a conscious level, that we're all sinners and we have to kind of be good to get back into God's good graces. But we get that kind of imprint, an energetic infusion as we're born into a Western culture, and often have to overcome that. And not to go to the other extreme of feeling entitled or superior, but just something that we are inherently valuable. We are all children of the universe. We all deserve to have happiness and safety, and to live the lives that we came to live without harming anybody else. So Matt Kahn has wonderful resources. There's a book he wrote called Whatever Arises, Love That. And the audio version is even more powerful. I really love to listen to his voice. It carries a unified field of unconditional love. So you can check him out and see if that works for you if you're dealing with self-worth issues. He has you can start with one of his videos that I love on YouTube is called Surrender to Love. So with the North Node in Taurus, or the second house, then we have the South Node in Scorpio. So we're healing from lifetimes where we encountered maybe really horrific experiences of violence, so the misuse of power, right? Where we might have been in the Holocaust, or burned as a witch, or something very extreme. And what that does is sets up, in our nervous system and deeply ingrained on a cellular level, a lot of fear, and predictably being on guard, being vigilant. And so North Node and Taurus is learning how to relax, when to trust, when to let go of that guard. Right. The gifts of that South Node in Scorpio and in the 8th house can be a natural therapist, a natural shaman, a natural detective or business person, someone who sees very deeply, who's been through a lot of tough stuff and can be there for other people who are also dealing with difficult circumstances, who's a survivor. And if they've done their own healing work and journey, they can hold space for others to do that as well. Okay, and again, some examples of people and countries with that nodal axis. If we reverse that, if our North Node is in Scorpio or the 8th house, then we're learning to go deep, learning to develop a capacity for intimacy, for emotional intelligence at a very deep level, giving ourselves permission. This is the second water sign. So learning about our complexity as human beings, things are not black and white. We're not black and white. Things are not just good or bad. So allowing ourselves to feel the depths of human emotion, from agony to ecstasy, from our fears and grief to our joys and creativity. Learning to deal with our shadow. South Node of Scorpio knows people have shadows. North Node of Scorpio needs to learn to face. And what that means is to integrate the parts of ourselves that were split off for some good reasons. When we experience a trauma that is overwhelming to us, that comes at too early an age for us to integrate, or we didn't have the resources at the time to process it, it gets stored in the unconscious. And so Scorpio and the 8th house is that realm that helps us to go down into the basement, so to speak, of our psyche and unpack those stored boxes of trauma and memories and reclaim those parts of ourselves in a healthy way. Okay, so Scorpio learns to work skillfully with emotions, with power, right? Uh, and by power, I mean the power that comes from truth, not power over something, but the power simply of knowing who we are, what was really true, that we regain the energy that was tied up with keeping things out of our consciousness. It frees up a lot of energy when we deal with our shadow and trauma. Scorpio is all about sexuality, about learning to engage again at a deeper level, shared resources, and the dynamics of intimacy. Things that can help us heal from those deep traumas, whether they were from this our early childhood or any time in our lives or past lives. I found one of the most powerful techniques is holotropic breath work. It's a simple but potent technique where helps to release what's been stored. We often hold things down by shortening and making our breath more shallow, breathing kind of up in our chest rather down in our belly, breathing quickly rather than slow. When we shift our breath, we shift our consciousness. So that's one way to gain access to what's been buried in the unconscious and bring it to the surface for healing. It can be very powerful. Just a few sessions can be completely life-changing. Shamanism and its practices of soul retrieval and other healing tools can be very effective also with deeply buried material. Somatic therapy, there's many different forms that work with the body, help release what's been stored in the body on a cellular level also. EFT, also called tapping, where you tap different parts of your body that are on different meridians, can help release trauma also. EMDR, which works with helping to synchronize the left and the right hemispheres of the brain, can be very helpful in repatterning neural pathways. And then some movies, What the Shadow Effect explains the power of the shadow. What's Love Got to Do with It? I believe is the story of Tina Turner. Departures is about death. A beautiful story about a Japanese man dealing with the death of his father. And the book Betrayal, Trust, and Forgiveness by a psychotherapist, Beth Hedva, very wonderful resource for journaling techniques. How we can deal with betrayals, what we feel are betrayals from our body, from others, from God at all levels. Really good, but simple but helpful techniques. And the Trauma Toolkit offers all kinds of resources, everything from homeopathy to some of the tools I've mentioned to other sources on healing. So with the North Node in Scorpio, of course, the South Node's in Taurus. So we're coming from maybe too much Taurus, Taurus again wanting stability, but we can have a fear of change, right? And fear of losing control, wanting to hang on, and maybe holding on to, if we've been coming from lifetimes where we either were destitute or had too much money, and those have different problems, but they're still can be so problematic. Learning when and how to let go, and learning to go deeper into our emotional body. A South Node in Taurus can also be a natural business person, artisan, especially good with finance or real estate, and tends to have a really good sense of the body. It can be has a lot of motion, what you call that, sensory intelligence, and maybe a strong attunement to music and beauty, a good aesthetic sense, and some examples of that as well. North Node in Gemini in the third house. Okay, so the third stage in a 12-stage cycle is, okay, we started in Aries, we started to stabilize in Taurus. Now we're moving out into the world. We're extending our antenna. So learning to observe, being curious, open-minded, appreciative of differences, being able to listen to dialogue, to relate to our immediate environment, right? Basically, Gemini is very much about multiplicity, that there's many doorways, many windows, many things to learn. So being like a butterfly or a bee, curious and sampling many different tastes of life, right? So reading a lot, journaling, any kind of mindful practice, mantra is a good spiritual practice because that mind can get a little too busy or buzzy. NVC, nonviolent communication, a wonderful tool both for Gemini and Cancer, helping to language what we're perceiving in a way that is most likely to get our thoughts and feelings across and our needs met. also. Elementary is a great series about Sherlock Holmes, who is amazing detective, amazing mind, right? Liar, Liar, Jim Carrey is in a delightful movie about what happens when you can't lie. Very interesting. Natalie Goldberg offers a great book called Writing on the Bones. Writing can be a wonderful spiritual practice where we can use stream of consciousness to see what's down in the unconscious, right? You set a time limit of say 10, 15 minutes or 20, whatever you like, and just write, whether you're typing on a computer board or longhand, doesn't matter, whatever is most comfortable for you, but don't stop. And if you get stuck, just say, I don't want to write, this is stupid, I'm bored, whatever, just keep moving and you'll break into a different mode of perception. Something will shift and you'll start contacting a higher part of yourself. Very, very powerful technique. Okay, and The Art of Communicating by Thich Nhat Hanh, wonderful book on how to really connect. Okay. So with the North Node in Gemini, of course, we have the South Node in Sag. So we're coming from too much of Sagittarius, right? Where we might have had very strong beliefs about something. We saw something, we saw life in a certain way. We might have been priests or teachers or ministers who had it all figured out. This was the truth. This is the way to be. And so Gemini says, well, wait a minute, there's lots of ways to look at things, not to get too stuck in just one way of looking at things, right? But a South Node in Sag or the ninth house can be a natural teacher, a natural preacher, a natural philosopher, someone who's comfortable looking at the big picture, understanding that it's important to look at the meaning of life, not just the bits and details, but what is our interpretation of that? What do we extract from that? Right? Could be a kind of a natural crusader, someone who can help to understand, to help us see a larger framework. A great example of that nodal axis under there, Donald Trump is one of those, and some other people as well. So if we reverse that, the North Node in Sag would be about learning to develop our own beliefs, our own ethics, our own sense of faith. You know, and we do that by stepping out of our comfort zone, by doing something out of our routine and having a wide variety of experiences. Right? So what we're wanting to do, and the picture shows us, is to kind of sit and contemplate, right? To look at and find the answers to those big questions of life. Who am I? Why am I here? What's it all about? Right? And so we can do that by traveling as a natural way to, see things from a different angle, a very immediate way of coming out of our usual mindset. Doing a pilgrimage or a vision quest is also a life-changing experience where we step out for, traditionally it's been a 4-day process, sometimes a 7-day or month-long. Even an afternoon or especially a day, you can do a 1-day vision quest where you go from dawn to sunset. You can do it very safely, go to a safe park or beach or place of nature where you're comfortable and safe for the day, taking just your journal and whatever you need to be comfortable, your water bottle, some food, and then to just be open to whatever messages come to you. Watch for signs, hold questions that you're pondering on, should I do this or that? And even just a day-long vision quest can be very helpful, but the key is to be in a natural, peaceful place and in a receptive state. Some movies that, Jhana Yoga is the branch of yoga that deals with understanding reality, which is what this North Node in Sagittarius is about. And The Matrix is a wonderful film about looking at what is real, right? And how that can be an illusion. What the Bleep We Know is one of my very favorite films. It's a mind-blowing film. I remember seeing it 3 times. I almost never see a film more than once. But it's so rich and it actually kind of shifts your consciousness just watching it about, helping us to question and see things from a bigger picture. Inception is also a kind of a mind-bending film. And The Art of Physics and The Biology of Belief are also wonderful resources. So if we have that North Node in Sag, we're coming from South Node in Gemini, right? So lots of Gemini can be too busy a mind, overextended, too scattered, too fickle and too mercurial, right? We have that word, but can also be a natural speaker, a natural writer, a wonderful teacher, a natural linguist, a great salesperson. and often is good with teenagers. That's the stage that Gemini relates to naturally, or a jack of all trades, someone who's very good at a lot of things. But the Sagittarius wants to focus, that archer wants to aim for the point, right? And some examples of that. North node of Cancer, south node of the fourth house. Here we're developing our feminine side from Gemini, where we're beginning to look at the environment. Cancer is about developing roots, right? Developing a sense of where we belong, right? And what we can call emotional intelligence. This is the first water sign. So learning about feelings and how to honor that as our emotional GPS. Our feelings tell us what is healthy and what is toxic, right? So learning also about the mother archetype, the mother-child archetype, which Cancer represents. It's the most feminine sign in the zodiac, often symbolized by the mother and the child. So learning what mothers us, what is nurturing, and the importance of connecting what we call in psychology our inner child, the part of us that may likely, maybe not maybe, but probably likely didn't get all our needs met growing up, and that we need to reparent, that we now as adults have the capacity to attend and be a good mother to as well. So with the North Node of Cancer, we're learning about what is nourishing, learning to be vulnerable when that's okay, when that's appropriate, and learning how to receive, okay? It's more vulnerable to receive than to give. And many people have issues about receiving, oh, I don't deserve that. No, I'm going to owe you. We have a lot of beliefs around what that means. So again, learning when it's okay, when it's good, when it's necessary. And learning to connect with the earth, with kind of creating a sense of what is home. We may or may not have had a healthy home growing up, but we can create that for ourselves as adults. We can find a place where we feel we attuned to that, or have an affinity to that land, that landscape. We might prefer to be by mountains or water or a certain kind of climate and a certain kind of community. So knowing what our needs are, and that those needs are legitimate. That yes, we can survive on bread and water, but we don't have to. We're not meant to. Okay, so the practices would be self-care, learning to take good care of ourselves, reparenting ourselves through inner child work. Nonviolent communication, again, a wonderful resource for being able to put words to what we're feeling and to be able to ask for what we need. Feng Shui is the ancient practice of creating balanced energy in the home, right? Family constellations is a therapeutic modality that's very powerful for seeing dynamics and healing and shifting and healing dysfunctional dynamics. And exploring our family history, our genealogy can be very helpful also. Where do we come from? Who were the people that lived on this land before the white man came? Ancestors, in most Western cultures, we don't think much about our ancestors, whereas in China or most Africa, many other countries have much more appreciation of who came before us and how we carry our ancestors in our genes and in our consciousness as well. So some books on that, or some movies that illustrate that family and belonging issues, and ancestral medicine, especially a wonderful book by Daniel Foy, connecting with our ancestors in a healthy way. So if we have that North Node in Cancer, then we're coming from that South Node in Capricorn. So South Node in Capricorn is someone who's used to being in charge, in control, super responsible, hard to come out of that workaholism mode, especially because it's so rewarded in our culture. This dynamic is one of the harder ones because our culture is so geared toward achievement and external success. Nothing wrong with that. But when we deify that and deny our needs to make it to the top, to be, the best, to put everything first besides ourselves and our family and our needs, we get out of balance, right? So a South Node Capricorn can be a wonderful leader, manager, naturally pragmatic, disciplined, comfortable with having a lot of weight on its shoulders, good with solitude, nothing wrong with that. But if we're always in that mode, eventually the body tells us we have to make a change, right? So that's where that North Node comes in. So good examples of that are below as well. And then the reverse of that, if we're Working with the North Node in Capricorn or the 10th house, right? Here we are developing a sense of responsibility and integrity, self-reliance and discipline, learning about limits and boundaries. Where, with the South Node in Cancer, we tend to give ourselves way too much. We don't receive enough. Capricorn says, wait a minute, that's okay to have some limits and boundaries, to set your own goals and priorities, right? And to learn to, it's okay to have, a vocation, or to be contributing back to the world, and to be running on our own authority, our own judgment, to not put anyone up on a pedestal, to know that the buck stops here, right? That we get to choose. We get to choose our lives, how we spend our time and energy, that we're responsible and accountable for our choices. Okay. So practices, practice setting goals and looking at what do we want to give back to the world? What do we do naturally that we love, that we may take for granted, that actually can be part of our dharma, right? And the willingness to take on responsibility, roles of responsibility when that's called for. Okay, and some books and movies on that. And that South Node of Cancer, again, the challenge is to release being dependent, being overwhelmed by our emotions, being defined by our family expectations, caring for everybody else at our own expense, letting our inner child run the show, and family patterns dictate all our choices. Okay. But a South Node of Cancer can also be a natural empath, somebody who's very sensitive, very nurturing, naturally supportive, very protective. Right? So there's some wonderful things with all the South Node qualities. And again, some examples of that. North Node in Leo, or the 5th house. Here we're developing our sense of individuality and authenticity. This is discovering, who am I? What makes me unique? We're all unique, each one of us. There's no one else like us on the planet. We are all distinct sparks of the divine. All right, this is the myth of the hero-heroine's journey, where we have to leave the known territory. If you study this myth, it has many different versions and many different cultures. Joseph Campbell studied this extensively and coined the term the hero, or coined this process as an archetype, where we journey, we have trials and tribulations, and we eventually discover who we are, and then we come back to the tribe empowered and able to contribute our gifts to the world. So Leo is learning about creativity, about love, about joy, about passion, spontaneity, being genuine, being just who we are, no pretense, don't have to impress anyone or have anyone else's approval, just being, essentially ourselves. And then sovereignty, to know that we have the right to be who we are, right? So doing what brings us joy, and creativity can be in 8 billion different ways. We think of it usually in the expressive arts, which it certainly can be, but we can be creative as cooks, as teachers, as mothers and fathers, as in any number of ways. So whatever puts us in that state of joy and self-discovery and play, right? All right, so psychodrama is a great modality for this, to act out the different parts of ourselves. Expressive arts therapy, using the arts, whether that's drama or dance or visual arts or music even, to free up our patterns and emotional trauma. The Lion King is a great example. It's a beautiful example of the hero journey, of a little lion growing up into being the king of the jungle. And Leo is, of course, associated with the lion-heartedness, the courage that it takes to be an individual. And Julia Cameron's books, especially her first book, The Artist's Way, a great textbook on how to be creative and how to reclaim or overcome our fears about being creative. And Wishcraft is also, Barbara Sherrill's work is wonderful. Those books are for free online as well. So we're coming from the South Node in Aquarius if we have the North Node in Leo. So that South Node in Aquarius, or the 11th house, can be where we had too much attention on groups, what other people thought, what other people needed, right? Too much worry about ridicule or rejection. Maybe we were ostracized or exiled for being different, standing out of the crowd. There are proverbs about, the tall nail gets pounded down or the tall poppy gets mowed down. You didn't want to stand out because that was dangerous in some way. So North Node having the courage to simply be, again, authentic and coming out of the closet, so to speak, whatever closet that was. This could be a natural visionary, someone who's also a natural rebel, revolutionary, who thinks kind of out of the box, is comfortable being on the outside, needing to kind of find that balance, right? Can be naturally tolerant or progressive as well. And some examples of that, Madame Blavatsky had this nodal access. Reverse that, your North Node in Aquarius, South Node in, or North Node in Aquarius, or the 11th house. Here we're learning to develop an affinity to be okay with being different or alternative, to remember that we're all equal. With the South Node in Leo, we can kind of feel special, and take up all the airspace. So Aquarius says, wait a minute, we're all stars here. We're all equal here, and we're all connected. So being able to find our tribe, finding people that we can really relate to, that share our ideals, share our interest, that can be friends and colleagues, right? And eventually also recognizing that we're here to be agents of change, especially if you have something in Aquarius like the North Node, especially, or if your sun or moon or other important placements are in Aquarius. Those are people that have often signed up to be on the front lines of this shift in evolution that humanity is working with right now. So this North Node axis is learning tolerance, right? Collaboration, how to work together, learning to deal with innovations, technology, right? Diversity, the value of friendship and community. And the practice essentially is to live out of the box, right? And to learn how to create and find your tribe. Right? Sangha is a Sanskrit word for spiritual community, like-minded souls, a support of people that have share a similar path. Right? And then finding a cause that you feel passionate about, whether that's climate change or animal rights, human rights, women's rights. And there's plenty of causes, plenty of work to do. So whatever rings your bells in terms of the cause. The singing revolution is one example of Aquarius that is tremendously inspiring about the power of groups. How in Estonia, hundreds of thousands of people gathered together to sing their patriotic folk songs, and they gained their independence from the Soviet Union without a drop of blood being shed, because they sang in these large groups, defying the law against doing that. And because there were so many of them, they couldn't all be arrested or killed. They would kill the whole country. And so they gained their freedom. So the power of collective consciousness is what Aquarius symbolizes. The power of one person is Leo, but Aquarius is the power of many coming together. It's exponential. Okay, and then some good books: Spontaneous Evolution, Blessed Unrest, and Active Hope. Wonderful books with lots of resources. So if we're coming from the South Node in Leo, I kind of touched on this, we might be coming from lifetimes where we're kind of special or in positions of power and needed, and we're standing out. And it could be a little bit of a drama queen, not always, but sometimes, where we often look too much to see what other people are thinking about us, kind of playing to the audience. So that North Node Aquarius is great to be a creative person and to be standing out, but just be yourself. You don't have to have everyone else's permission or approval. You don't need to be a star, athlete or star. If you want to be, great, but you're not doing it from an ego point of view. You're doing it from your center, your essence. But a South Node Leo can be a natural artist, a natural actor, can have a lot of charisma, a strong will, a strong sense of identity. Some examples of that below. The North Node in Virgo, Pisces, or I'm sorry, the North Node in Virgo or the 6th house. This is the dynamic of learning to develop discernment, essentially. So if you're looking at it as a cycle from beginning in Aries to stabilizing in Taurus to extending out into the immediate environment in Gemini to finding roots and home in Cancer to developing our sense of self in Leo. Now, this is the second Earth sign. And it's the sixth sign in the zodiac. So it's about integrating. It's about looking at how our body relates to everything else, the body, the mind, and our spirit. So it's about health and healing and learning to sift and sort what's useful, what's relevant, what's applicable, and letting the rest go. So it's a very practically oriented side. How can I apply what I've learned? When it's at its best, it's also about service, learning to be helpful to others, and learning about what is healing, what helps us become more whole. Okay. And some of the practices, yoga, any body practice that has a spiritual component, like yoga, qigong, tai chi, wonderful for integrating the body, mind, spirit connection. Studying nutrition, any form of health and healing studies. These are some movies as well. Taming Your Gremlins, it's a very tiny book, but it's a wonderful book for feeling or issues around self-deprecation if we don't think we're good enough. That's more so for the South Node in Virgo, but also for the North Node in Virgo as well. And I wrote a book called Life After Twinkies, which is about how to transition from processed to whole foods, how to find the diet that works for each one of us. We're all different physically, mentally, spiritually, so there's never one size fits all. So health and healing always is on an individual basis as well. So we're coming to the South Node in Pisces. So Pisces, this is the last sign in the zodiac. So where we have walked a mile in everyone's moccasins, right? It's the third water sign. So it's about compassion, empathy, understanding. And its shadow side is where we can be lost in too much water, too much passivity, victimhood, where we just we're letting anything happen that's happening. We're misinterpreting spiritual principles by going with the flow all the time with no discernment, with sacrificing rather than serving, or getting lost in addictions of all kinds, whether they're more traditional ones of addictive substances or workaholism, and codependency can be addiction also, where we focus on something else rather than our own center. So that's the danger of the South Node of Pisces, but the gifts can be great also. Being a natural mystic, very psychic, a natural empath, also very creative in terms of being able to just bring things through, having a strong connection to the muses, so to speak, right? Being very attuned to spiritual truths, right? So some examples there. And if that's reversed, then we have the flip side of that. So if our North Node is in Pisces, we're coming from that South Node in Virgo. So we're wanting to develop compassion, a sense of unconditional love, our intuition, right? Very important, especially these days. It's becoming ever so important because there's so much misinformation. There's so much manipulation of information. There's deep fakes. Anything can be deleted with a couple of keystrokes now. There's a lot of censorship going on. So we have to feel and trust and do our research as well on our own homework, but really trusting above all what feels right, because the mind is easily deceived, right? But the heart is not, the body is not. So developing intuition is really a major skill set for all of us during this time in humanity's journey. Okay? And remembering our connection with all life, right? North Node and Pisces, where it's all God and drag, as Ram Dass put it so beautifully. So with this North Node, we're learning about acceptance, not again to be a doormat or to have no discernment, but to be at peace, that everything has its place, that we don't have to judge anything. It's not our place to judge. We don't know the whole picture unless we have access to the entire Akashic library throughout time and space. We don't know all of what's going on, right? So just not arguing with reality is how Matt Kahn puts it. So being able to accept and, as a consequence, forgive. Again, that doesn't mean that we tolerate everything or don't have boundaries, but that we don't have to label things as bad, good, or label people as bad, good, or exclude them or throw them out of our heart. Right? So learning to surrender to what is. This is what's happening. How do I relate to that? How do I respond to that? learning to trust the universe, to trust our intuition, to explore metaphysical realities. Only 5% of our universe is visible to our five senses, right? To our eyes, to, if we look at the spectrum of frequencies, only 5% of that is perceivable, even to our most sophisticated scientific instrumentation. The rest of it, X-rays, from X-rays and gamma rays to radio waves and electromagnetic frequencies, those are invisible. Some of those we can measure, but a lot of those we can't. And so 95% of our universe, we have to perceive through our sixth sense, our intuition. There's a lot that we don't know. That's what we call the great mystery. Okay? So Pisces is wanting to explore that vast realm of the invisible. Okay? So we do that through meditation, through dream work, also through time in nature, which is in a unified state all by itself, if it hasn't been too disturbed. Bhakti yoga is the yoga of devotion, of finding something that we can give our hearts to. Working with divination tools, there's any number of those, from astrology to, oh my God, there's so many, to numerology, to the runes, to the tarot, to scrying into a crystal ball, to bibliomancy. There's many, many ways of divining, whatever works for you. Gandhi is a beautiful example of Pisces at its best. Groundhog Day is a delightful film about how we keep doing things until we get it right. Maybe that's how it works. The Fountain works with different realities as well. And some books that I have found useful about that articulate this challenge of understanding Pisces energy. And then with the South Node in Virgo, we're coming from lots of Virgo. So we're really good at discernment and dicing, splicing and categorizing and figuring things out. But we can also be locked into judgment, especially self-judgment, self-deprecation, that we're never good enough. So overcoming that, knowing to relax around that to know when it is good enough, when we've done enough, when it's good enough for now. Nothing is ever perfect. But it might be just right for right now. So learning to shift basically out of our head into our heart is the dynamic of Virgo Pisces. Virgo is ruled by Mercury, which is about our mental energy. Pisces is ruled by Neptune, which is the higher octave of Venus, about love and unconditional love. Right? So the good side of South Node of Virgo can be a natural healer, a natural person who loves to be of help, loves to serve, loves to be always improving themselves and helping others improve as well. Good organizer, good at details. Okay, and here's some examples of that. Okay. So that's a basic framework. Now we can go a little bit deeper. Something that we can still apply regardless of whether we know our birth time or not is transits to the nodes. So when anything lines up with our North Node, wherever that is for us, the moon will cross that point once a month, the sun once a year, Venus and Mercury once a year also, Mars every 2 years, and so on. Less frequently, the outer planets, which move more slowly, will cross that North Node. But those are great check-in times to meditate, especially watch your dreams, any synchronicities, to hold those questions you may be waiting or debating upon, choices that you're wanting to make a decision on, and see how you feel on those days. I use those a lot for myself. I've calculated those for many of my clients and get the feedback they've been useful as well. So great tool for that. If you want, I'll be happy to calculate that for you. Just send me your birth information, whatever you know about it, and I'll email you a list of those North Node dates, and you can find out for yourself if that works for you. Okay. The slower the planet, the farther out it is, the bigger field of consciousness it encompasses, and the bigger spotlight it symbolizes. So the moon is a good spotlight once a month, but it goes around every month. Jupiter takes 12 years to go around the zodiac, so it's a much bigger spotlight. Saturn takes 29 years, an even bigger spotlight. Chiron 52 years. Uranus 84 years, Neptune twice that, Pluto twice that. So the slower the planet, the bigger the spotlight. But even the moon can be very helpful. Okay. Another layer, if you want to, or want to work at a deeper level, if you know that each sign has a planet that corresponds with it, those are called planetary rulers. That can give you more information about your North Node. So for example, if your North Node is in Pisces, the ruling planet of Pisces is Neptune. So you would look in your chart where Neptune is located, the sign, house that it's in, and any aspects to it. That will give you much more information as to how you want to use that Pisces North Node. Think of it this way. If you're born in the United States, that's some information. If you're born in Washington State, that's more information. If you're born in Seattle, that's even more information. So knowing that your North Node is in Pisces gives you the country you're born in. Knowing where your planetary ruler is gives you the state. And then knowing the aspects to it will give you the city, right? So much more specificity, okay? All right, you can do that for your South Node as well. Both very helpful. And then any aspects to the nodes, if you have the sun conjunct your North Node, or Mercury or the moon or any planet conjunct your North Node or your South Node, those are important, right? If they're conjunct the North Node, there's spotlights on an ongoing basis, helping calling us toward that North Node in that particular way. Okay, so for example, if the sun is conjunct your North Node, you're wanting to emphasize the development of your essence, your identity in that sign and how in that house. Very important to develop, incorporate into your identity those qualities. If it's on the South Node, you're wanting to do some releasing around that. You're still bringing in some gifts about that. For example, someone who has the South Node in Mercury, with Mercury conjunct the South Node, generally is someone who's really good with their mind, with their intellect. They're facile with words. They're maybe a natural writer, speaker, teacher, linguist. But they can also be really overly dependent on their mental faculties. So taking the good, leaving the bad, the South Node. Squares are challenging. Think of them as spotlights that are aspecting, they of course aspect both the South and North Node, they all do, but like midpoint, having to resolve where that planet is, what the planet symbolizes, its sign and house and aspects, is really key to integrating that North and South Node. So they can represent critical issues or complexes or blockages or blind spots. So a square, anything square the North Node is a big signpost as well, and helpful indicator of what needs to be resolved. Okay. And then if you have a little more astrological background and know the charts of other people, your family, your friends, your partners, you can look at your nodal aspects and their nodal aspects, and you'll find some very interesting things. It's very common to have good friendships with people who have the same North-South node that you do. Right? If you share the same North and South node, you're coming from similar places and you have similar lessons and challenges. So you can be good buddies, you can help each other. If they're reversed, if your North Node is their South Node and their South Node is your North Node, then you're born about 9 years apart. That too can be a strong bond and friendship where literally you're coming from where they're going and they're coming from where you're going. So if you see those dynamics, those are often very powerful bonds. And you often have the feeling of, I kind of know that person, especially when the nodes are the same. There's an instant affinity, comfortableness, like deja vu feeling. And you may belong to a similar soul group. You may have been connected in past lives, very likely. Okay. And also if another person's planets aspect your North Node, that's like they're shining a light on your path. And also if they're connecting your South Node, that's a different quality. Then it might feel like they're, again, familiar, comfortable, but they may tend to pull you back into old patterns. You have to watch for that. Or they just could be buddies that you want to connect with again and have more experiences with. Okay, so inner aspects are very interesting and useful to look at with anyone who's been important in your life and still is. So one way to organize all the complex information in astrology into a meaningful whole, and I touched on this earlier, is to think of it again as a cycle. And those three things that are with the alphabet, the planets, signs, and houses, the planets are essentially functions of consciousness. They answer the question, what? What are we looking at? What kind of conscious are we looking at? The signs answer the question, how, the lessons, how they want to be expressed. The houses, where they'll be experienced. And the aspects, whether they're conjunct, square, oppositions, whatever, how they're wanting to be integrated. Okay. So in some ways, astrology is, not want to say simple, but if you grasp cycles, that it's all about cycles and it's all about the sequence of things and how things are part of a progression, it's like the Rosetta Stone. You can get a lot of mileage out of that. Another metaphor, you can think of the planets as teachers, the signs as their costumes, and the houses as their stages or stage settings, and the aspects as the script, right? Or the whole thing is a script. And again, teachers, lessons, and classrooms as well. To see they're different. The planets and signs and houses are different, but it's like a noun, verb, and adjective. They function differently. They can have the same cognate, the same origin, but they're expressed a little differently. They have a different function. But they all trace back to this 12-stage archetypal cycle of development. Okay. So some resources for the nodes, some good books that I've come across. A wonderful one by Jan Spiller called Astrology for the Soul. She goes through all the different, well, as I just did in a very superficial way, all the different possibilities for the North and South node, and concentrates a lot on how to work with them in very pragmatic ways. She goes in much more detail and depth. Mark Jones, an evolutionary astrologer, has another wonderful book called Healing the Soul. He also includes the dynamics of Pluto and Uranus as being indicators of trauma and past lives that are very important as well. As does Patricia Walsh, another evolutionary astrologer, who goes into depth in the nodes and how they can be understood as indicators and worked with to heal long-standing issues. And then Brian Clark online has a wonderful article called The Dragon's Tail, where you can access at this link that gives great information on the nodes. And also, Cafe Astrology, I found, has some great sources of information that are pretty empowering. There's a lot of stuff on the internet that makes me cringe when I read it. Not helpful, can actually be scaring and disempowering. But Cafe Astrology generally writes things that are helpful and empowering. So it has some good stuff on the nodes as well as other astrology resources. So that's my toenail of the astrological elephant for the lunar nodes. There's much, much more. I hope you have fun exploring and learning from your own chart and the charts of others about that very useful piece of astrological information. If you'd like more of what I do, every 2 weeks, just before each new and full moon, I write a new moon and full moon forecast that covers the current astrological shifts. And I include helpful links, resources, photographs, quotes, things to help you not only understand what's happening or what's wanting to come forward right now, but how to work with it more consciously in an empowered way. That's available by subscription via email. You can find out about that on my website, ecoastrology.com, or by emailing me. I'll send you my latest forecast if you'd like a sample. I also do a yearly forecast that has an overview of the entire year, all the archetypal themes and how to work with those, with a 6-page handout that deals with lots of ways to work with astrology. I have an ebook that's a compilation of all the notes from classes that I've taught over the years on astrology. And then I do one-on-one teaching. I'm not doing any classes right now. I may start doing that later this year. Again, I haven't taught in a while, but I do one-on-one. I love to teach astrology for personal and special growth. You can check my website for that information or call or email me as well. And I'm available for readings also. I specialize in life purpose, spiritual growth, vocation, and relationship. Okay, well, thank you very much for this opportunity to share what I know about the lunar nodes with you.